everybody's kind of got their own flavor. And, we all grew up with Hunter Thompson as kind of a crazy cross between fantasy and journalism and all that kind of stuff. And what do you feel your pull with journalism and stuff? Where do you like to go? I saw, it was very interesting. I was at the Telluride Film Festival, and they did, Annette Insdorf did a little group session about documentaries. And it was Roger Moore, Werner Herzog, Ken Burns.
Wow.
And it was really interesting because, Ken Burns was like, well, if it's not there, then it's not in my film. It has to exist in the real world for me to use it. That's the way it works. And Werner's like, look, I'm just there to take you into the event. I want you to feel the event. And Roger Moore is like, well, to be honest, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have an idea of what I think I'm going to get. And I start to go down into it. And the next thing you know is you unturn rocks. You never know what you're going to get. And the next thing you know is I'm all over the place doing all this stuff. And I got to come back and put something together that makes sense. So I kind of show my journey of getting the information of what I got. And so it was very interesting to get a perspective of documentary on a whole perspective. And there was an MTV guy there too that was talking about music, rock music, and some of the documentaries there. And so it was very interesting because it kind of gave me a perspective that documentary is sort of in some way, shape, or form showing you the past in a sense.
You had a question? What was the question, Andy?
My question is, for you, it seems like your entry into MTV and stuff was sort of through journalism, and it seems like your podcasts and stuff sort of have that journalistic approach and stuff. And so I was wondering your interest into journalism and your voice that you feel where it comes from.
Yeah. We're in this crazy environment now, this new reality where alternate facts are a thing, which, as a journalist, it's almost hard to speak those words with a straight face. But so there's a couple different things. One, on a personal level, I'm having spent 3 years in New Orleans. We lived in New Orleans, and that's when I started working for this independent news organization there, where I still work. In some ways, the bubble that we live in and that we love so much here, we loved so much, that protected us and gave us this wonderful experience of childhood here in Aspen, is kind of boring from a journalistic standpoint. There's not that many stories here that are interesting to me.
Right.
I'm not that interested in the fight. I mean, I am interested. I am personally interested in what happens at the airport and, and development and all that. But it's not all that juicy, right? It's not as fascinating as criminal justice or environment in a place like New Orleans, Louisiana, where that's just, it's really meaningful, important stuff going on there. And I don't mean to be dismissive of what's happening in Aspen, because there's things that happen in Aspen. What I find to be kind of a fraught moment right now for our kids and the next generation is, I went and took, you refer to Michael Moore, Werner Herzog. I did a guest lecturing spot at Tulane and in a first year journalism class, and I did a straight read of a news paragraph, any kind of paragraph about something that happened, and I played it for them. I recorded it like it was radio. Played it for them straight, played it for them with the sound effects of a crowd in the background, played it for them with whimsical kind of idiotic music, and played it for them with foreboding music and said, so just tell me what you think of how these 4 things sound to you. And it's so over the head obvious, like how you're being manipulated all the time by a journalist's decision, whether it's in production or post-production, the choice to cover that story in the first place. All of these things are decisions, and all of these things have an impact on what is the downstream result for the consumer, right? And so to me, I think the important thing is, as we consume media, you have to be hyper aware of what it is they're trying. What's the ulterior motive here? And not that there's a nefarious motive, but there's always some kind of choice that's been made. And what does that choice mean for you? Is there such a thing as reality now with a story? Can you just get a real story? Can you really understand what happened?
Did you ever read The Shipping News or watch the movie with, I think Kevin Spacey did it?
I read it.
There's a great example of exactly what you're talking about, where it was about a newspaper chain. It was actually one of the Gannett chains where they filmed it when I was working with Gannett. But he was talking about changing your headlines to be more punchy. And I'll just read it to you. It says, tell me the headline. And the guy says, horizon fills with dark clouds. And he points out at the sea, and there's, clouds. And he says, no, imminent storm threatens village. Then he says, well, what if no storm comes? Well, the village was spared from the deadly storm, And I mean, that's exactly, you're right. I mean, it's like making the news be what you want it to be.
Yep.
Whether it be for financial gain or political power gain, whatever it may be. Yeah.
Yep.
Scary time we're in.
Yep. Yep. It makes it difficult as a consumer.
That's why I kind of wanted the question, because I feel like we're in a time right now where journalism is at a crux. There's sort of a bunch of stuff going on where people are calling themselves journalists, and they're really just hypesters. I mean, our trolls are now reaching every facet of the world.
But here's the irony is that doing a podcast, we could be considered journalists right now, Andy. And I say that with my tongue in my cheek, because working with actual journalists and being married to an actual journalist, they would just be, they'd be pissed even hearing that. That is absurd. What are you talking about? But that's where we are.
Yeah. But I guess in a literal sense, you are journaling something. You're chronicling. You're chronicling conversations. You're not fact checking. You're not. Yeah, I mean it's.
Well, it's almost
semantics.
all opinion. It's almost more opinion than anything. And so, is it opinion or is it news? And I think
that's that 27, the 24/7 cable news. I blame Ted Turner for that, honestly.
That's Ted Turner's fault.
Because they had nothing to fill the airwaves with in between actual news, national news stories of significance.
But
so then enter opinion-based reporting. And that's what everything is now. So,
but
Donald Trump will say something, or Biden will have a gaffe, and the next 24-hour cycle on cable news is going to be people saying, well, yeah, I feel that if Biden, blah, blah, blah. And I find myself yelling at the TV often, just saying, I don't care what you think. Report the news. That's it.
Well, we all grew up with Walter Cronkite, and Walter Cronkite one night would say one story, and then he'd say, here's the other side of the story. So you always got two sides of an issue with Walter Cronkite. It wasn't like he had his opinion in it. If he told this side of the story, he used that opinion. If he used this side of the story, he used that opinion. And so you could sort of get an idea by listening to both stories where things lie, you know, whereas that disappeared once he left. I don't think there was any journalist that sort of...
Sure that there were, but he was the first, and he was the best at it for television news, I would say. Maybe Edward R. Murrow, but you had your Peter Jennings, and you had your Tom Brokaws and all those guys. But
I don't feel like Peter Jennings or Tom Brokaw their opinions were still in their stuff. Whereas with Walter Cronkite, he literally gave you one night and that was that view, and then he gave you the next night and that was that view, and it was the same person. As opposed to, I think every time I hear Peter Jennings or, you know, those guys, I still hear their angle, their spin. I can still feel it from them. You know, I don't really feel like it almost is too much work for folks. So they just want to hit one shot, one stream, and just do it once. They don't want to have to do it twice.
Well, I don't think that people watch the nightly news I would hazard 20% of the population watches nightly news now.
Yeah.
I don't think they
terrifying, really, because I think what you're alluding to is they're getting it from Facebook and TikTok.
Yeah.
And email and whatever else, or just
or
talking
Fox,
to
or CNN or MSNBC. But, you know, the nightly news thing used to be the fireplace.
Or the single point.
What did everybody gather around?
Single point of truth, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there were 3 of them, I guess, but not anymore.
Well, we're living in a world now where print was print and it had some power and it had stuff. But now, since everything's digital, it's almost as if you're in a swamp, and it all is regardless of, you know, we talk about the FCC and it's about radio and about, you know, broadcast television and stuff. Well, the internet is no different. It's broadcast, but yet there's nothing really protecting it. So it's sort of a Wild West.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey, in the interest of time, because I know we've all got things we've got going on, but tell us, Carolyne, you said you have a podcast now, and you're still working for a news outlet.
Yeah, there's a little independent news organization out of New Orleans called The Lens. They're just a nonprofit news organization, and I do a weekly kind of a roundup of the most important stories of the week with them, with the journalists. I'm just the host and the producer, and that's what I do still. So, because we do it just like this, and I have recording software and got my nice mic.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, I feel inadequate over here with my computer mic.
Yeah. So I still work for them, and it's just this. It's great. It's like quarter time, so it's perfect, and keeps my hand in New Orleans, which I find to be a fascinating and infuriating city.
Isn't it always that way?
Yeah.